Hello and welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horwitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content. Visit the website, dsmsports.net, and of course, check out the podcast on your preferred podcast platform. Really psyched for today's show. A tremendous conversation. Always an interesting topic to talk about, especially with the forthcoming NIL rules in college athletics and increasing interest among athletes in all areas of professional sports in working with and becoming their own brands. I'm going to be joined on the podcast today by Margaux Gill. She works in athlete marketing, and we have a fantastic conversation ahead. So stick around for Margaux. But first, this episode's helpful tool. This episode's helpful tool is not like our usual helpful tools. It is a newsletter. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, just so I need another newsletter. Everyone has a newsletter now. Our recent guest, Eric San-Inocencio, has a great newsletter on SM Sports and digital strategy in sports. But this newsletter that we're going to highlight on today's episode is seriously a must subscribe. You probably already follow his Twitter account, but the newsletter is a great way to see what you may have missed. And that is Matt Navarra, Navarra. His social media geek out newsletter, as he calls it, is a weekly newsletter, publishes every single Friday, and is a roundup of everything going on in the social media platform space, whether it's interesting stories that are happening among the social networks. And probably the most important and valuable part is what new features are being worked on and what features might be coming out in the near future, what's out in beta, what's just released. Just a really excellent collection of everything going on in the social media space. And now with a little bit of caution, don't treat every beta launch or every trial as something that you all of a sudden need to start developing strategy for. That's something that all of us in the space can be very wary of and be anxious about when there's new stuff coming out. Oh, I got to figure out a strategy for it. We have to figure out how we're going to get on it. But it's good to just take a step back. But again, to go back to the main point, and that is Matt Navarra's Geek Out newsletter is just so valuable for me and really for anyone that works in the greater social media space. So check it out, subscribe. You can find it on a link on his Twitter, or really just Google Matt Navarra Geek Out newsletter and subscribe to it, because you will be glad that you did. You'll also be glad that you stick around for a tremendous interview with Margaux Gill, all about athlete marketing. Joined today on the podcast by Margaux Gill. She is in athlete marketing, and we are going to have a tremendous conversation. She is really good in the space, and welcome to the podcast today, Margaux.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Really psyched to pick your brain. You've been able to work with a lot of great athletes over the years, but you're still pretty young, of course, much younger than me. But before we get into the meat of our discussion, Margaux, tell us about your career path. You've done a lot already in your career, had some great opportunities, and so tell us about how you made your way in the space and any tips for folks that want to do what you do.
Yeah, I've had definitely an interesting career path. I've had a lot of pivots. Originally went to school for digital media broadcasting. And so thought I really wanted to get into sports reporting, got a lot of experience with that in school, whether it was writing, working for my school's sports network, covering just random events, anything that I could. But then, after I graduated, thought I had all this great work and was so excited to find a job, but just couldn't really find a job. Got super discouraged, but ended up deciding to just get my master's online in strategic communication and just continue doing the freelance work that I was doing. Mm-hmm. And so through that, connected with a lot more people, ended up covering the NFL Pro Bowl. And I think it pretty much was kind of because of that. I ended up getting a job with the Dallas Cowboys on their social and digital media team. So I spent 2 seasons there with the Cowboys. And then left there, decided to move on to Open Doors, which is an athlete marketing platform. Originally started with kind of working with their clients and helping them come up with campaigns and kind of managing and executing those. And then ended up kind of moving over to help run Open Doors' social media. And then more recently left there at the end of last summer and decided to kind of go all in on being an athlete marketing rep. Originally, that was kind of the one thing that I really wanted to do in my career was work with athletes. It wasn't necessarily work in sports. It was more so work with athletes. And so that's kind of manifested itself in different ways throughout my career. But now I get to work directly with them and help them build their brands, help them with social media, and help them earn endorsement deals.
Love that. I do want to kind of figure out when was that sort of pivot from I want to be a reporter, I want to be a digital broadcaster or in that space, in the sports space, to, hey, I think I like this athlete marketing thing?
Yeah. So I think originally it was just like when I was freelancing while getting my master's, I just kind of started doing a little bit more of the behind the scenes content creation stuff.
Mhm.
And so a lot of it was focused on like athlete content, but I was just more behind the scenes. And so like I realized that, I didn't necessarily have to be on camera or, have a byline with my name on it. And so I think that was just kind of the initial thing. And then, yeah, well, at the Cowboys, I think my favorite part about that was creating content with the athletes. So like for me, again, it was just, I just wanted to work with athletes. And so then that's kind of when I was like, all right, I need to stop working for this big brand and kind of make a move where I can, help athletes and use my social media marketing background, but be able to use that for the benefit of athletes.
Love it. Yeah. And I don't want to, sell yourself short here. You clearly like you earn these roles along the way and we're able to really pick up. I mean, I want to kind of hear what that grind was like when whether it was part of your undergrad or when you were doing the masters of gaining all these skills and gaining all this information and frankly as well becoming credible enough to get those freelance jobs and having and be able to earn those jobs. So what was it like kind of figuring out what skills do I need? What skills did I get through my education? And then as well, like how did you go about getting those freelance jobs and ultimately like what was that yada 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 part that lands you with the Cowboys that I'm sure any student listening would be like, wow, I would love to make that same connection happen with the Pro Bowl that you were able to do.
Yeah. So I think I was pretty fortunate. I think that my school, I went to Liberty University, they really, really prepared me. Just a lot of the teachers, professors that they have there worked in the business. And so they were very upfront about it's not easy. You kind of have to be, especially nowadays, like a jack of all trades. You kind of have to be able to do a bunch of different things and then kind of work your way up. So it's funny in school, like I kind of was video was kind of like my specialty. So yes, I did some on camera work, but also like videography and like video editing, which now I would not say I'm a videographer at all. Like I don't mess with it. I can like edit if I need to, but like no, there's so many incredible people. But like that was kind of something that I honed in on and like Photoshop. I got familiar with that, so I can do basic stuff with that. Also not a graphic designer. But I think that they just kind of instilled in me to kind of be able to do a lot of different things. And so they also had a sports network, so I got involved with that in a variety of different ways. So I knew how like live games worked. And so, yeah, I just like, for me, reaching out to people, like, I don't know. I mean, I just kind of wanted to do anything. I worked for free a lot, which, there's kind of a big debate about that, whether you should do that. And if you're able to, I recommend it, but also there are opportunities that are paid. And so, yeah, so I was able to kind of build up a pretty good bulk of work, working for a couple different decent brands. SB Nation, I wrote for them for about 2 years and traveled kind of around the East Coast, covering women's basketball in both the NCAA and WNBA. But then, yeah, for the Pro Bowl, it was actually, I was working for a bowl game down in Orlando. And so they had 2 bowl games. And so they were basically the group that was kind of like hosting the Pro Bowl. They didn't run it, but they were just kind of like, look, if you want to come down and kind of create some content for us during the Pro Bowl, like we'd love to have you. And so I was like, I mean, yes, would anybody say no to that? And so that was kind of my first taste. And I ended up doing it 4 years in a row with them when it was in Orlando. And so like, that was just an incredible experience. It just happened because like I had connected with these people to work a college bowl game, and then it was a blast, and they asked me to come back for the Pro Bowl. So again, networking, that's like the most basic piece of advice, but like it really is the best piece of advice. And like this industry is so small. So networking can really go a long way. It can lead to some incredible opportunities.
Yeah, I love that anecdote too. College bowl games are a pretty good opportunity to get those volunteer experiences as well with all the events that are going on around the game, whether it's parades, appearances, and other activations. I mean, obviously in a non-pandemic year, and that's really cool. It's just like there's that category of ways that a lot of people get their foot in the door in sports. It is bowl games, it is community events, it is minor league teams, it is college athletics as well, which is awesome. And you and I are very much in the same boat. I was a aspiring reporter in college and picked up video skills, picked up video editing skills, picked up some graphic design skills, and just enough to get by for the most part.
Exactly.
And by no means would I be able to do any of the incredible stuff that comes out today in the space. But
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I can appreciate the work that goes into it for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Learned a lot. But yeah, I can't even compete now. So I don't even like say that that's a skill that I have because people are just so incredible nowadays.
So tell me, it sounds like you were actively creating content, of course, while you were in school, and going through the program there, and also working with athletics. So, what kind of content were you producing? Was it really about what was going to go out on the school accounts? I mean, I know you work with Open Doors; they also do it. Or you worked with Open Doors; they also do a lot in the college space, as does some other companies as well. Was student athlete sharing and getting content then really a thing at that point? And also, I guess if it was or was not, what was it like working with players around content that ultimately would end up on on the school's platforms?
Yeah. So I think I mentioned earlier the school had a sports network. Liberty University, you don't really think that much of that, but they actually were affiliated with ESPN. And so they actually, all of their sports games were actually on ESPN Plus. And so like everything was like basically student run. And so like all their sports, like you could get experience kind of working games and stuff. So a lot of things were for ESPN Plus, or then like their own sports network had a weekly show that like went on like local channels. And so like a lot of content I ended up doing feature producing and reporting for that weekly show. So that was like kind of TV. It was like live to tape. So I didn't do live stuff for that. But it was kind of like the feeling as if it was live.
Yeah.
And then I worked in recruiting for the football team. And so I got close with them. My dad also happened to be the football coach there. So like had that connection. But also like for me, I also started my own website and kind of video blog. And so I think that was something that also like was intriguing for people, because I would do like a weekly interview with a football player. And then I also started traveling and interviewing football players at other schools, and even a couple NFL players as well. But that was just all on my own. Like I reached out to people to see if I could interview, and I got turned down a lot more than I got accepted. But it was really incredible that people were willing to let some like 20-year-old girl just walk in and interview their football players. And so yeah, that was something that was really cool and unique. And that was kind of something that kind of showed my like go-getter spirit, I think. But yeah, so that was something that was really cool too.
So then, as you made the transition to the Cowboys, and even to like, I guess first off, what was it like, kind of working with those athletes? Was it different? I mean, obviously, Liberty is D1 football. Guys were there, and I'm sure some of them had pro aspirations or NFL aspirations, and thought they were big men on campus. They certainly were in high school. So, like, what was the process like of building relationships with those players at Liberty? And then also moving on to when you were with the Cowboys, of building relationships with those players. And I'm sure there's nuances in between as well, with just pro and how the coaching staff feels about it as well, and all that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the biggest difference is like the NFL, playing football is your job. And so I think asking any NFL player to do something above and beyond, like when they're done with their job, it like sometimes doesn't go over well. But I think, yeah, college players, they're excited to do anything in front of the camera, or just do anything just to make them feel special. And so, yeah, college players will almost always say yes. NFL players, sometimes it's a yes, sometimes it's a no, sometimes it's initially a yes. And then the next day, if you go back to try and do something, then they're like, no, I'm not in the mood. So that was definitely interesting. But I think also me being a student at Liberty, like I knew a lot of those guys personally. And so I think that they just were willing to do it just because they knew me, and they knew that, I would ask fun questions, and it wasn't going to be like a typical like boring interview like they so often get. But yeah, I think at the pro level, you kind of have to build that trust. And I think every team kind of handles it differently. I mean, just looking at content from all the NFL or NBA teams, I think you can kind of tell which teams really allow their social media team to kind of, I don't want to say like exploit their access, but like really use their access and make the most of it. And some teams, it's not as accepted or wanted, I guess. And so I would say the Cowboys, that was kind of one struggle, is we were kind of told don't really bother the players. And so it was like to ask them, like it has to be like a pretty good ask if you're going to ask them to do something. And so I think that was just a struggle where it was kind of changing the mindset to, can we create content without asking the players to do something most of the time? And then when we do ask them, like it's got to be a pretty big idea. I think that was a struggle for sure. But no, I mean, we made some cool content. It was still a great experience. And yeah, I would tell anybody to at least try and intern with a pro team to get that experience, and just get that name on your resume. But no, it's definitely different pro in college.
Yeah, it's super interesting too. That point you made around how if you're going to do something good with a player, if you're going to plan something out, present an idea, you can generally, you can often get that access. So it might take a little bit. It might take some planning. It might take some people signing off or whatnot, but it's interesting that you kind of can't be as nimble, then you can't maybe necessarily try an idea that might not work as well as you thought it would. You kind of really have to plan more in advance, and really that can be a good thing sometimes if you're really thinking things through about how I guess worthwhile is this content, but it also means you can't necessarily just try something real quickly or grab a guy on the side or, capitalize on a trend or a meme or whatnot. So it's interesting to think about those kind of dichotomies.
Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely can't be as spontaneous at the pro level, but also every team is different too. And so that's just kind of the way that they did things. But no, it was still a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun there.
And then I'd love to kind of hear, thinking about when you're working with those different types of athletes, and this may differ, of course, across the individual person and maybe generationally to some degree as well. But when you're thinking about how, I think in college athletics, a lot of times the players are most concerned about, how can I get verified? And then maybe eventually, how can I get more followers? And maybe on the pro side, it's more, how can this ultimately get me paid or get me some sponsor posts? And so like, what were those incentives like? And especially when you are, working with, looking at your time, both with the Cowboys and then moving on to Open Doors where guys are literally there because they are getting paid to post content, of like, what's kind of in it for the athlete, what makes them want to post, and what makes them feel like they're happy with the outcome of content that's being produced for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of initially hit the nail on the head with like it kind of varies per person and generation, and there's kind of a bunch of different factors that go into it. But yeah, I mean, I think if you can kind of find like a comp for like what their social media could be, or like if you know their personality, then you can kind of find a comp that you could be like, this is what you could be doing and should be doing. And like, this is the benefit that you would get from doing this. And so there's not a one size fits all. And I think it's interesting to see people who, weren't really on social media. Like Tom Brady is a great example. He went from like not really doing anything to like having a whole team that like creates all this cool content. And like with him, like, he's not creating that content, he has a team. And so I think that even getting across to players sometimes too, it's like, being active on social media does not necessarily take away like your privacy or your private life. Like if you're doing it right, people still shouldn't really know all that much about you unless you really want them to. But like you can still have a presence without it really affecting your daily life. And it shouldn't, it shouldn't be an afterthought. You should be on top of it. And if you have a team, then they can make it easier for you. But then, I mean, I think the younger generation too, they're just always on social media anyways. And so like, I think they get more excited about sharing little details about their life and letting people into their life. And so there's not a one size fits all. But I think if you can, based on their personality, kind of show them how they can manage it or what they could be doing and like what the actual benefit is monetarily, I guess, then like that can go a long way.
Yeah. And it's really interesting to think about how, these younger athletes, they've been on social their whole lives. They don't know anything different. And because of that, they've probably developed, whether it's a personality or a brand or a way they use social or how much they do share of their life or what kind of, I guess, how they want to present themselves on social media. Whereas someone that's a little bit later to the game or doesn't share much might be a little more cognizant of the brand they're putting out there and maybe more intentional about the brand they're putting out there. And that may or may not be true to them, as authentic as the young person that just shared without thinking about it most of his or her life. So when you're thinking about that and trying to help an athlete get started or improve their social media, if they're already on there and already posting a little bit, how much is it, hey, let's present the most authentic version of you versus let's look at who you should be or who you want to be, and present that brand as such. So like it's a little bit of a slippery question, I guess, but and kind of how do you think about that when you are working with an athlete to help them figure out who their brand should be, and how that may or may not differ from who they really are, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, being authentic is absolutely the number one priority at all times. When I say like showing them who they could be or should be, I mean that more in the sense of like, I guess showing them, I guess kind of like the value of what type of content they could be doing. And it doesn't have to be every day, but it could be, you know, if you do a version of this, like your fans will probably like that, or this performs well typically with guys on your team or guys on your position or whatever it may be. And so I think that's more like to show them examples of things that they could be doing. But ultimately, yeah, it has to be authentic and it has to speak to who the player is. But also like, even if they have a team that's working for them, everything should still go through the player. I don't think things should be posted without the player's approval. And it used to be kind of where like people like myself, marketing reps, would actually just run social media for players. And players just didn't want to be hands-on at all. But I would say that that's not really a thing anymore at all, thankfully, because that's just not organic or authentic. And so even if a guy posts once a week or whatever it may be, I think that he should still have kind of final say over whatever content goes out. Because yeah, it has to be authentic. Brands are getting smarter about that. They want authentic. And so yeah, first and foremost, yeah, that has to be the biggest thing. But I think showing them different types of content or how different athletes are using social media, it can be really, really beneficial for them to see that tangibly.
Totally. And the fans are getting smarter too. And they are almost look out for opportunities to call someone out for not being authentic. And there's too many opportunities now where that can happen. Then all of a sudden you fall even farther because it's clear that you've been full of shit the whole time, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah.
So sure. How have you seen that come out through even the way the athletes have worked with brands? I think we've seen kind of this creator space, influencer space certainly evolve in a really good way, where it's not just, hey, I'm a brand, here's the asset you're going to post, here's the exact copy you're going to post, #ad, let's call it a day, to a little more of a collaborative process, because they realize the creator influencer knows their audience better and knows how they should sound when they are promoting a brand. So like, what's that process, or how have you seen that evolution play out in the sports world? And then what's that massage process like? And maybe it's you working with the athlete on, hey, here's the messaging. You can say that it's going to be in your own words, but we have to make sure that this is kind of the message that they want to really convey about their brand.
Yeah. I mean, I think the best brands right now definitely give copy, just that full, free reign to the athlete. Because you can definitely tell when it is kind of just like sterile copy. Mm-hmm. And so I think that has been one of the biggest things, one of the biggest shifts, at least, because it used to be like, brands would be like, say this and add these 6 hashtags and all of that. And like, that just feels so fake. Which
athletes totally write posts like that. It's
yeah, no thanks. I don't think anybody wants that. So yeah, I think that brands are definitely getting more hip to that. And so I think that, yeah, I would not advise an athlete to ever do a deal that like they could not, write their own copy. And so I think that that's definitely the biggest thing. I'm sorry, I feel like there was a second part to that question.
Yeah, and then kind of like when they have the opportunity or the ability to write their own copy, how do you then make sure that it is aligned with what the brand's trying to get out there? I mean, there's a lot of different things that an athlete could say about a brand that they support or they use or they like, but there might then be a brand campaign that the brand wants them to make sure to hit on, this angle or this messaging, and how do you make sure the athlete gets it out there but still in their own words?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's kind of been the biggest shift, is that like, even that I've come across, is like brands are getting smarter for the fact that like it needs to be authentic. So like they don't even want to work with athletes that don't actively use their brand or product. Because there was a time where I reached out to a brand, and I'm not a fan of the spray and pray approach. Like, I also agree that it should be authentic and be like somebody who uses your product. And but I was pitching an athlete for a company, and they were like, so does he actually use this product, and how long has he been using it, and what's his experience with it? And so like brands are getting smarter at asking those questions up front before a deal even gets done. And so that like at the point when an athlete is talking about it, it is authentic and organic, and they don't really have to coach it. But if there, there are campaigns where, there has to be certain wording or a certain phrase in it. But usually it's like a 1-sentence thing, and then they can add whatever else around that. But I think that it's just brands get it now, whereas they used to not. It used to just be cool enough to, have an athlete post about or endorse your product or service or whatever it is. But now they know what they're looking to get from it. And so they know to ask those questions up front, where it's kind of by the time you get to writing copy, you already know that it is, a beneficial and an authentic relationship from both sides.
Totally. I feel like there's like a football analogy with like a playbook and improvising on the field, but still scoring. There's some analogy there that I'm not in the right mindset to tease out, but I always love the analogies. Yes. Having a great conversation here with Margaux Gill, clearly all about athlete marketing. It's still a few more minutes left for this episode shareable stat. And I want to talk a little about the athletes themselves and their capabilities, because I think we talked about Tom Brady, who, of course, at least it would appear, has a great team working behind him, unless he is making all these sick edits by himself in his free time. And then you have the other side where maybe you look like a Juju, who is making his own TikToks and streaming on Twitch and making Instagram stories all the time. And so, like, does the future look like a more of a professionalization of social, not professionalization meaning inauthentically, but a player working with a professional creator, photographer, or videographer to say, hey, I want you to help me create my content, and we're going to work together on this, versus the Jujus or the up and comers that have used these platforms natively and will continue to do so, throughout. Are we heading more in one direction or another? Are athletes more proactively seeking to get better at Instagram, to get better at TikTok, or is that more, hey, let me find someone who's gonna help me create better content?
Yeah. I think there's still going to be a mix of both. I think, this younger generation, they know how to do everything themselves. So I think that a lot of it still will be from like their perspective in doing things, but like there's always going to be athletes that, have videographers and photographers follow them around because they want that high quality, perfect content every time. But I think there's going to be a mix of that too, even like from the younger generation, where they want those perfect posts. And then they also want the raw, organic, spur of the moment posts as well. But I do think that, the older generation, it'll be really interesting to see if people do kind of lean more into things. I mean, now it's just kind of overwhelming how many social platforms there are and how many different pieces there are to each platform. I mean, Instagram is like 5 apps in one right now. But I think it's going to continue to be just kind of a mix of what works for the athletes. Because some athletes don't even want to mess with social media, but they know they need to be active on it. So then, they hire a team. It's definitely going to be interesting. I'm excited to see where this space goes, especially like with college athletes, potentially being able to make money. That's going to be a really interesting aspect. But from them, like, unless they're, the big guys, they probably won't have the money to pay somebody. And so, it is going to be all organic or themselves, or, maybe they'll be friends with the photographer on campus or whatever. Right. I'm super excited to see how college athletes kind of exploit the space.
Yeah. And that's why I'm always intrigued too about how much athletes care to learn about the platforms, almost like a part-time social media specialist. And also then how much they are actively seeking that knowledge. Like if Liberty had a social media education for athletes, a course or even a night class or whatever it could be, like, would that be a viable thing? Would that be something the athletes would really want to go after? Or did they grow up with it? So they don't really need to know it, or they don't need to know how to use it more professionally, or they don't need to get up to speed on the latest additions to Reels or the newest platform additions to Twitter and Twitter Spaces. So like, how much desire is there for that you've seen for athletes to really want to almost learn like we do in the social media space and go seek out those skills and that knowledge and follow Matt Navarro on Twitter and follow the newsletters and whatnot, versus just either relying on someone like you to teach them or just saying, hey, I'm going to post where I know and I'm going to rely on someone else to sort of teach me about what I need to know when it's time to know it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if it's available to athletes, like there's so many schools now that have programs that are going to be helping their athletes with their social media and their branding and just NIL in general. I think if it's available to athletes, that they will take advantage of that for sure. As far as reaching out and trying to like learn from others, that'll be interesting. I don't know. I mean, I think that if they know that they might. But I think still at college, I mean, college athletes, like they already have such crazy schedules. So if it's not necessarily something simple and easy and on campus and available to them, then they probably won't.
In the pros as well, Margaux, I'm curious, like, are any pro athletes seeing the opportunity, knowing that, hey, even if I am a backup offensive lineman, if I do things right, I could still be a really popular athlete on social media, or at least popular enough to get some money. So should I hit up this athlete who I know is really good at social media? Or should I hit up my agent to see if I can get some help? Or should I hit my agent to see if I should hire someone to create content for me and work with me?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of agencies have built-in people. Some agencies are kind of more forward-thinking than others, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of agencies do a disservice by not kind of helping their athletes in that way or by being kind of hands-offish. But like, it's interesting too, because I think a lot of football players will have their contract agent and their marketing agent separate. Not necessarily the same, but like basketball, usually it's all in-house and part of the same agency. And so that's been an interesting thing, just in different sports, how they do things. But then also like NBA, they promote their players more. They want their players to have personality, and the NFL is still very much so behind. And then, baseball and hockey are even behind more so than that. And so I think, these next couple of years will be super, super interesting. But I think, I think it's probably going to take, these first couple of classes of guys who were able to make money in college and then come to the pros and they're making more money than guys who have been in the league for 15 years for people to be like, okay, I'm missing out on a huge opportunity off the field, off the court, whatever. And I need to take advantage of that. And so I think we're definitely seeing a shift where some guys are kind of starting to get it. But I think there's still a lot of education that needs to be done. Like I said, so many guys their excuse is like, I like to keep my life private, and I'm all for that. But there's still a way to be active on social media and make money off of it without having to share details about your personal life. Literally a game photo can go crazy or like you traveling on game day, like you're whatever, a screenshot of a song you're listening to. Like people are so hungry for content from athletes that like they will just eat up almost anything. And it's kind of insane, but I'm here to convince people that they need to take advantage of that.
Seriously, you could you just want to go in some athlete spaces and be like, hey, if you're an above average player in this league, if you just tweet a different emoji every night, it's going to get a ton of followers and a ton of engagement. Like, it doesn't matter. You can tweet yourself blowing your nose and or post on Instagram you and just eating lunch. Like it's crazy how yes, it's I don't want to oversimplify it, but when you're a pro athlete and you have people hanging on your every word or image, it can be relatively easy at times.
It really can be.
I'm going to ask you an unfair question, Margaux. But we talk about the NBA is rightfully held up as one that's really doing it right and having a lot of players who are superstars in their own right, both in the market and nationally and internationally. So what would you do if you were what do you think Major League Baseball, the NHL, and other leagues that are trying to really aspire to get where the NBA is in terms of the level of stardom of their athletes to help them? Is it an education thing? Is it providing more content? Is it the league supporting players and holding them up as superstars and promoting them as such? Where do you think the opportunity is?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it could happen overnight at all. But I mean, I think baseball, just for example, like they're struggling with the younger generation. And I think a big part of that is like just the kind of like unspoken rules everybody always talks about in baseball. And it's like how like bat flipping is like frowned upon, and like that's something that's fun. Like, you know, people want to see that. And like, if I saw that a different bat flip every night on my feed, I don't even really watch baseball, but like that would make me potentially want to watch baseball if that was a thing. Hockey, like fights, I know like aren't great, but that's fun content. If I don't watch hockey, but I see, oh, there's a fight happening, like maybe I'm going to turn on the game. But like, so I think it's just kind of showing those fun, dangerous, I don't know, moments that like are not, I don't know, they don't happen all the time, but like they can, you know, bring a little bit of excitement, and kind of doing that. But I think, yeah, I think both of those sports should definitely promote their players more. And like, I don't know, like it just makes me sad that like they like just kind of the pressure I think that the league has put on them to kind of not, you know, share their personality or act like they're having fun. Yes, it is their job, but like they're playing a sport for a living. Like that is so cool. And like I don't know, they just like don't really get the recognition or the appreciation that I think that they should. And I think that, you know, some of those players don't like not being in the public eye as much. And I think the sport really just needs to ramp up their marketing around their players, and just kind of show that it is a fun sport. You know, it doesn't have to be boring, but because I think right now baseball for sure just has this connotation of being boring and old school. And unfortunately that's not the way that attention spans are going right now for the younger generation. But yeah, I think that for sure just marketing in general needs to be beefed up, but they need to exploit those moments that are out of the ordinary, even though a bat flip isn't out of the ordinary, but like just something that shows personality or fun. But yeah, I think there's a long way to go. That's kind of a loaded question. There's a lot that can be done, but
we're getting there. There's definitely been improvements, but yeah, I really,
for sure.
This whole notion goes so deep. I mean, you look at how basketball players, it's obviously it's a smaller rosters that you see their face all the time. They come up in these AAU circuits where they're treated like superstars from day one, expected to be these superstars. Where as in baseball, you know, there are very few overnight successes. You spend a lot of time toiling in the minor leagues. Same with hockey. Rarely are you an overnight superstar, with some exceptions. And whereas in basketball you get drafted and then you're whatever, you're LaMelo Ball or you're Zion Williamson and you're already kicking ass. It's a deep and an interesting conversation for sure that we can spend an hour on, no doubt.
Oh, for sure.
I do want to ask you one more thing before we'll share with stat. I promise we'll get to that, but the time's flying by with you and me, Margaux. And that is looking at kind of just both the opportunity for athletes now and how much they need brands, and also how much or rather how much they do need brands or how much they don't, versus how much are just kind of becoming brands themselves, and whether that means taking equity or creating their own merch line, creating their own line of X, Y, and Z, or co-creating a line with a company like that helps them create their own whatever recovery supplement or whatever it might be. Like, how do you see this future going of athletes really building something off of their own brand versus latching on to an existing brand as an endorser?
Yeah. I mean, I always am an advocate for an athlete to make their own money or start their own business or whatever it may be. And like how I mentioned, brands are getting smarter, athletes are getting smarter. We're definitely seeing more equity deals happen. Cause I think too, like, you know, like for an athlete to get $25,000 to do one post, like, okay, that's great. But then it's like, you know, if they don't love that brand, or if they do love the brand, they're going to want it to be more long-term, you know, because that really doesn't do much for them. And so I think whether it's equity or just even long-term deals, where it's a 10-year deal to do something, I think that's going to become more common. I think the one-off posts are kind of going to go away, just because, you know, if you love something, you want to share it and you want to, you know, have that kind of be a part of you. And so, yeah, so I think that's going to be a huge thing. But yeah, as far as merch, I think every athlete should have merch. Every athlete, should have their own logo that they brand stuff with. But yeah, I mean, if you want to create your own, you know, product line, I'm all for it. Like Tom Brady, again, he has that whole stream of income. And so I think that's definitely going to become a bigger thing. But I think even if it's not coming up with your own product, it'll just be a longer term deal for sure with
I mean, you look at even the way that platforms are starting to evolve, where they are trying to make it easier for people that are influencers or creators to monetize themselves, and we're seeing that play out really quickly with, with even with Clubhouse looking to pay creators on a monthly basis, and obviously, YouTube and TikTok working with creators, whether that's connect them with brands or just to give them new opportunities to monetize themselves through. And we'll have super follows on Twitter soon enough. Well, you have tipping and Twitch and subscriptions, and so it really does make you think. Well, athletes are already kind of built-in influencers, creators on their own. So if platforms are trying to help the audience make more money themselves, then that opens up potential monetization opportunity for athletes that may not involve a traditional brand partnership deal. There's a lot happening in the space, and athletes are right at the center of it because they are the original social media influencer, I guess you could say.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think this past year has shown too, just the influence that athletes have in this world. I mean, the NBA literally stopped because its players didn't want to play.
Yeah.
And so I think that, they have strong voices in this world, and they have, an important message to share, all of them, whether it's, just their story of how they got to where they are. So many have so many unique stories. And so, yeah, I think that athletes realizing that like they hold some power in this world, and they have some incredible influence. We're going to see some incredible brands come from athletes coming up for sure.
So next time an NFL team, a social media manager or director is trying to get access to an athlete, and the GM says no, the athlete can be like, well, what if I still want to do it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, athletes, I think, will be more willing to do stuff for teams. The younger generation will. But I don't know if this is true, but I'd always heard that, at the Cowboys, kind of the older guys kind of encourage the younger guys not to do a bunch of stuff for the brand. But I don't know, it's definitely going to be interesting, but I think, the younger generation is going to change a lot in the content game coming up.
I mean, Margaux, in the next 5 or 10 years, there's going to be no players left in pro sports, arguably speaking, that were born before Facebook was started.
Yeah.
It's wild to think about, but we're not that far off from that day.
I know, it really is crazy. I mean, I guess unless Tom Brady is still playing when he's 60, who knows, honestly.
They'll have to kick him out when he's 60 or something. I mean, come on. Well, Margaux, we can keep going, but we will keep going in our Mingle with Margaux segment. Our first episode's Shareable Stat. We'll be right back with that. Such a great chat with Margaux. She is thoughtful, articulate about this stuff, and really has a great ability to relate to athletes, to understand where they're coming from, and is already doing great things in the space with a tremendous future to come. And we will have some more fun with Margaux in our Mingle with Margaux segment. Stick around for that. But first, this episode's Shareable Stat. This episode's Shareable Stat comes from a Billboard article recently that was all about superfans, and a pretty cool stat that came out of it. Now, this is a range of a stat, but the stat is that the top 1% of fans of entertainers or of teams are responsible for around 50 to 80% of the total revenue that they generate. So 1% of fans generate 50 to 80% of the revenue. Now that is a powerful statement, and one definitely to think about quite a bit. We always we've been talking for years about the moving the fans up the fan spectrum from casual onlookers and casual fans to a little bit more fans to more avid fans to that super fan element when they are just spending all day, every day thinking about your team or that athlete, how they can support them in different ways, telling their friends and family members to support them and coworkers to support them, wearing their gear to show the public that they are supporting that team or athlete. Those super fans, and those are the ones that are engaging with every social media post. They might be sharing a ton of social media posts, commenting, and speaking and engaging with the team and with other fans. So don't take for granted those super fans. Yes, they might just seem like they're always there, and you don't have to try as hard to reach them. People are always going after the casual fan. How can we reach more fans? And that's certainly a laudable goal, a great goal to have. But don't forget about the super fans and how you can constantly move fans up that fan spectrum. What opportunities are there to get fans closer to your team, closer to your organization, and let those super fans come out of the woodwork and move themselves up that fan spectrum, so to speak. Whether that's a data collection vehicle, a Facebook group, a different type of group on your own platform, reaching out to super fans to talk to them and really show how you appreciate them and help them recruit others to become super fans as well. Turn them into not just the evangelists they already are, but evangelists with something to offer, something to give, and help them help you. So we could really go on and on about this forever, but just a great shareable stat that underscores the importance of those super fans, and that stat is the top 1% of fans. This was talking specifically about entertainment and sports media, but primarily entertainment was this article. But the top 1% of fans are responsible for 50 to 80% of the total revenue generated. So powerful stat. Think about it, talk about it, ponder it, and stick around for the Mingle with Margaux segment coming right up. Right back in this episode's shareable stat, and I'm joined once again by Margaux Gill. She schooled us on all things athlete marketing. Are you now ready, Margaux, to do a little mingling with Margaux?
Oh yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's mingle. Number one, talk about the responsibility you feel as a young Black woman in sports and really helping to lift others up and and removing obstacles that others would have to achieve what you have.
Yeah, I would say the last 2 years, this is something that has really been weighing on my heart. It has become really important to me. Just experiences that I have, even at the time, I guess I didn't really think of it as a race thing necessarily, which I guess was a good thing. But, the more I talked to other Black women in sports, the way I was treated or the rules that I had to follow specifically that, my white peers didn't have to, it was kind of becoming a common theme among the Black women that I talked to. And so for me now, I definitely want to, speak out about some of the struggles that I had, but also, be there for Black women that want to get into this space. And I think this pandemic has been cool because I've talked to so many young Black women trying to get into sports. And so, I think sharing my experiences with them and telling them the realities of it, but also encouraging them, I think has just become so important to me because, there's, this world has been so crazy this past year. But I think that there are a lot of things that are changing, I think, for the better. And so I'm always going to be someone to, encourage and uplift, others, even if they're not Black, I still will encourage and uplift you. But I think that the Black community in sports has become super near and dear to my heart.
I love that. Yeah, it's been awesome to see just the Black community being raised up, whether it's creator groups or clubhouse chats or whatever it might be, and you being a great beacon for the community and helping others as you mentioned. And so my hat goes off to you, and keep up the awesome work that you're doing in the space.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Number two for you, Margaux. Let's have some fun and look back at your Cowboys time. Tell me the favorite piece of content that the Cowboys put out during your time with the team.
Yeah. So the one thing I'm most upset about is one piece of content that didn't end up happening. We were going to take the defensive lineman to the State Fair of Texas, which is a big deal, and ended up kind of falling through at the last minute. But as far as something that actually did get put out, and actually I think it got put out after I left, but it was the last thing I worked on was our schedule release. And it was with Amari Cooper, and he was doing, oh shoot, now I can't even think of what it's called.
No worries.
What is it called? Where you're there's sounds, it's quiet sounds. ASMR. Oh, ASMR. There we go. Yes. Okay.
I remember that now. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So Amari Cooper doing ASMR, and it got super mixed reactions, but that was just something really fun to plan, and put together. And Amari is just, he's a shy guy, but when you can bring out his personality, he's super fun. And so that was kind of one of the first things that fans kind of got to really see his personality and to see him have fun and kind of let loose. And so yeah, that was kind of one of my favorites.
I like it. I totally remember that schedule release video too. And that's great. Although I do feel a little bit bad every time I hear Amari Cooper because I am a Raiders fan. And so
sorry about that.
In the black and silver, but I want to say it worked out and we have a great wide receiver one now, but we really don't. So
yeah, I mean, he needed to go so he could thrive. I'm sorry.
Number three for you, Margaux. Tell me, going back to Open Doors now, the most memorable campaign an Open Doors athlete or group of athletes executed during your tenure there that sticks in your mind.
So most memorable campaign, I think it was the NWSL NWSL, and Secret Deodorant. It was a huge campaign that was 50 soccer players. And yeah, so that was just something really cool to see that executed in the way that it played out and all of that. So that was super cool. But also one of my favorite things from my time at Open Doors is, and I think this is still true, I don't know for sure, but the post that was, I guess the athlete earned the most money, the most expensive post that we ever executed was to a woman athlete. And so, so I think that was pretty cool too.
Well, you gotta tell me what post was it?
It was Alex Morgan and Striker.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so great to hear. I mean, we're at that time now where a lot of female athletes are better at social or more engaged on social than some of their male counterparts. And you look at an international star like Alex Morgan, she's known all throughout the country, and that's awesome to hear. That's really cool. And I love the NWSL Secret campaign. That was a really great campaign, a really great just activation from Secret, supporting women's sports like that. It's fantastic.
For sure. Yeah. No, gotta love women's sports. Gotta support them.
Heck yeah. Number 4. You mentioned how there are athletes that you can certainly show off to others and saying, hey, if you do things right, you can end up as engaged as this athlete or have as many followers, or have as many deals. So, or even just athletes that are good at social media. Tell me just maybe 2 or 3 athletes or examples that you tend to go to most when you're advising athletes on, here's someone who is, doing things right because he or she or they are active.
Yeah. I guess sticking with women's sports, I'll just go Serena Williams. I think she does a great job of balancing like professional life and personal life, and like even stuff with personal life, you still don't really know much about her, but like, she shares her daughter and her husband, and just like little things. And like she did a recent video like with her trophy room in her house. But like she couldn't even like tell you what all the trophies were. And so it was just like funny and relatable and just like just fun. But like it was super natural and organic, and like she wasn't even trying to like come across as like snooty or anything like that. But it was just like a really raw moment of her being like, oh, and then there's this, oh, and I tried about this and this. And so like it was super cute. But I think she does a great job, balancing professional and personal. Somebody else, let's see, I can't even think. I mean, LeBron James obviously comes to mind. But let's see who else. I can't even like think off the top of my head right now.
I will say that every picture of like Serena and her little daughter like playing tennis together is so like cute. The cutest thing ever.
So cute. Her little mini me, and I love it.
But LeBron's a good entry. We're good unless you have you're telling. Because I think LeBron's another great one where he is very authentic, and Taco Tuesday and all the wine drinking, and it's you never know what's coming up next, but you can tell it's definitely him, and no one's telling what to say. For sure, yeah. And I mean, obviously, he's just kind of just his own person, kind of his own brand, and not everybody is going to be him or can be him or aspire to be him, but. I think he does a great job. Obviously he has a team helping him too, but there's so much raw and organicness to it too, that like, it's kind of hard not to love him. Totally. Sometimes those superstars, you want a reason to hate them, but you can't when they're that authentic sometimes. Exactly. Number 5, I like this one. Tell me your favorite piece of advice that you give to people that are aspiring to work in the sports business space. Yeah. I mean, earlier I mentioned networking. That's always going to be number 1. But I think another important thing is to find your purpose, figure out what it is, because through that, then you can kind of figure out where you want to go. I mean, I think so many people, even like I'm guilty of it, giving advice to people about, what they should do next or some options for their career. But like ultimately, like I can't tell people what to do, and nobody really can kind of tell anybody what to do. But if what your purpose is. And for me, that is being a connection between fans and athletes, and helping the athletes kind of maximize their influence to fans. And so that's kind of a lens that I look at whenever I'm considering a job or something. And so I think that if everybody can figure out what their purpose is, then you can kind of, figure out your career path and choose, the option that's best for you, because it's not going to be, sometimes like dream jobs aren't actually a dream job. It might not be your dream job. And so I think that you kind of need to figure out what you enjoy and what you're good at. And then you can kind of, go from there and navigate your career through that. Gosh, I love that. It's like know your why. And a dream job's not a title. It's what are you actually doing in this dream job? Yep. That's exactly. Awesome. Number 6, this will be a lot of fun. Tell me the athlete, past or present, that isn't active on social media that you'd most want to see get on social, and why. So past or present. If you can't pick just one, you can name more than one, but who's that athlete that you're like, this person needs to be on social media or active on social media?
I mean, I might take a little bit of a spin on this question and say, as far as past athletes, I wish that there was social media when they were playing. And I would say Deion Sanders and Dennis Rodman.
Oh, gosh.
But present, I mean, so there's one athlete, and I've told him this. He's technically on social media, but he's not really active. But Dak Prescott, that man could do so much more. And I mean, knowing him, like, he's a very private guy. And so I know it really just is about, he just doesn't care to share much. But I think even he could just do so much more. So we'll see, once he's back playing, if he picks things up again. But he's an athlete that's on social media, but not really active, that I would love to see get way more active.
I love that one. Where does the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys rank in terms of influential people in the state of Texas? It's got to be up there.
Oh, got to be top 2 for sure.
Number 7. This is kind of looking back on the year that was the pandemic year, which we passed the anniversary recently in March. Tell me, what was the best thing you did in 2020? And this is meant to be very open-ended, so however you take it, it could be the best TV show you got to binge, or a skill you picked up, or just something that you look back in 2020 and it was like, I did that, so it wasn't all lost of a year.
Yeah. Honestly, I would say the best thing that I did was sit still. I think people that knew me before, I was kind of always on the move, always traveling, always doing something, out and about, all of that stuff. So I think it was just really good for me to be forced to sit still and just and I'm actually an introvert too. So I actually like being home, but I also love just moving around, and experiencing other places and doing other things. So I think I just got really content, just being by myself, but also at home and not feeling the need to, be doing a million things all the time.
That's great. No, I feel like I've definitely seen lots of people talk about how they used to be on 90, 100 airplane flights a year.
Oh yeah,
this year they haven't been. And that's good. I'm glad you're able to really take stock and sit still for a moment, as you said.
Yeah, for sure.
Number 8. This is the food question. I'm going to add a bonus part to this question too, because you reminded me earlier. So tell me, part A, the best meal to get in Dallas and where to get it, and part B is just going to be a little spinoff of what's the best food at the state fair.
Ooh. Okay. So the best meal in Dallas. My favorite restaurant is Nick and Sam's. It's a local steakhouse. It's just got really good vibes and incredible food. So when I go, I usually get a half salad to start, and then get filet mignon, of course. Their sides, all of them are super good, but definitely recommend the elote, the king crab elote. Their Brussels sprouts are really good. And then you got to end with dessert. They have so many insane desserts. They have a rainbow cake, which I'm gluten-free and can't eat. But everybody loves that. But they also have this really good chocolate souffle situation that I love. So Nick and Sam's in Uptown Dallas, big fan. And then the state fair, being gluten-free, I can't eat half the stuff there, which is unfortunate. But they have some ridiculous things, absolutely ridiculous. And my best friend actually works for the state fair. And so she tells me about everything too. But a favorite I know that I haven't gotten to try is the fried mac and cheese balls. Yeah. But for me, they have barbecue there. I love me some barbecue. So yeah, I'm gonna go with barbecue. But they also have really good margaritas. So not a food, but goes well with food.
It's always a fun tradition every year when they have the Red River rivalry, and then you get to see what are the craziest fried foods this year. What else?
Oh
what
my gosh.
do they figure out how to fry this year?
Yeah, it is insane. People get creative, but people will also eat anything that's fried, I've learned. So yeah.
Gotta love Texas.
Yes.
All right, last one for you, Margaux. We didn't talk about this, but you mentioned it very in passing, but your father is Turner Gill, who I'm a huge college football fan, so I knew Coach Gill going back to Buffalo. So tell me, what's it like growing up when your dad's a football coach or college football coach, especially?
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't know anything different, but no, I mean, it was awesome. My normal was definitely not normal, but yeah, so I mean, I grew up around football, around sports, around athletes, and that's why I love working with them and wanted to work with them. But I think, yeah, I didn't realize as a kid how unique so many of my experiences were. My dad actually, he started coaching at Nebraska, and I'd been to 3 national championships by the time I was 4. And so I didn't realize that that was such a big deal. And now I'm kind of like, what the heck? I can't even really remember them. And so that's a bummer. But yeah, no, it was super cool. And I think that that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, is because, you know, I've seen athletes up close. I've gotten to know so many on a personal level, and like, one, they're just normal people. Like they're not like these bigger than life people. They really are just normal people. They just happen to play a game for a living. And so like, yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate to have had a lot of the experiences that I've had because of his career. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely shaped who I am, and then just like what I've wanted to do with my life. So yeah, it's
I'm interested too, Margaux. Like, something that certainly a lot of athletes do worry about, or at least it's tough for them, is seeing negative comments after a bad game for them. And if you are a head football coach in college athletics at a D1 school in particular, if you lose one game, let alone 2 games in a row, you know, there's vitriol flying. So like, did you find yourself kind of be like trying to insulate yourself from that? Like, how much did you pay attention to it? How much did your dad, and that both positive and negatively, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, my dad didn't pay attention. He could care less. He's got a job to do. And like, yeah, the public doesn't really impact him. He didn't really read the newspaper. He had social media, but other people ran it. So yeah, he didn't really see them. He knew stuff was being said, but like, again, didn't matter much to him. He was focused on things inside the building, inside the football building. But for me, yeah, I always got the advice to not read stuff. But I mean, like, you know, I'm on social media all the time. So I definitely saw things. And I would say it was definitely more impactful on me. And my mom would try not to read stuff, and she wouldn't really read stuff. But I think a lot, like, something that people don't really think about is it's usually harder on the families than like the actual coach or the player necessarily. But yeah, no, that was definitely one of the toughest parts too, especially his little stint at Kansas. Was not the most fun, but no, still way more pros than cons to being a football coach's kid. And yeah, but no, I mean, yeah, there definitely were negative aspects, but social media, yeah, gotta love it and hate it at the same time.
Yeah, certainly can help you to relate. I'm sure like you may not be able to know what it's like to have you personally being talked about, being on the hot seat on SportsCenter, or having fans, you know, just spew vitriol on social, but you've been in those shoes to some degree, being Coach Gill's daughter and seeing that stuff on SportsCenter or on social media. So it's a fascinating way that you can relate to athletes that very few others can. That's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think even players, when I meet players, that, you know, they don't necessarily know that right away, but I think that they can tell that, you know, I'm a very genuine person, and I'm not looking for something from them. And so I think that that's kind of allowed me to be able to relate to athletes and have conversations with them, you know, that they might not have with other people, just because, you know, I know kind of how to handle situations with them. So yeah, I think that it's helped me tremendously to have that background.
I really appreciate you sharing that stuff. That's really interesting to me. Mm-hmm. All right, Margaux, you kicked ass in the mingling segment. Now your chance to take over the podcast from me and tell us your social media all-star to follow. Just tell us who they are, what platform or platforms they're on, and why they're following.
Yeah, so I am going to shout out a fellow Black woman, Alexis Robinson. She is also in kind of the athlete marketing space, athlete and influencer marketing space. She owns her own company, One Brand Agency. She's funny, she's interesting, she's dramatic, but she is a great person to know, great person to connect with. She knows a lot of people. And so I believe her social media is _ Alexis Marie 24, I want to say.
No worries, we'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, cool. And so, yeah, so Alexis Robinson, she's also, you know, grown up in the sports world. Her father and uncle were in the NBA. Her brother played in the NBA. And so she's just very familiar with the sports world as well. And she's kicking ass in what she does too. So gotta shout out Alexis.
That's a great one. How about you, Margaux? Where can we find you all over the place on social and digital?
Yeah, so I am at Margaux Gill on all socials, which is actually spelled MargauxGill. So spell a little differently, but yeah, it's the same across all channels. And then my website is at Margaux, or it's just margauxgill.com. And so yeah, you can find me there. But I'm active on social, love to connect with anybody. Usually check my DMs decently often, so can always shout me out.
Love it. Find her, follow her. Just tremendous to be able to talk to you today, to learn from you, learn from your experience, learn from everything you're doing in the space. And I cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast today, Margaux.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Neil.
Thank you so much again to Margaux Gill, just a rock star in the athlete marketing space. Just a tremendous conversation. Really appreciate her insight, her thoughtful takes on a lot of different areas that we covered today on the podcast, and can't wait to see what she continues to do in the space, and of course continue to watch the athlete marketing space grow and evolve very quickly these days, very rapidly in an exciting way. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. Hit me up on LinkedIn or message me there as well. Visit the website, dsmsports.net, for more content episodes, and visit the podcast and subscribe, follow, do whatever you like on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.